Good morning.
Hello, everyone. I'm here.
Hi,
I'm
Bill.
here too. I'm from. We're not in the same place. We tried to be, but it didn't work out. So anyway, I'll let you start, Andrew.
Okay, awesome. So today we're going to talk a bit about the Bot Framework 4 and do a little bit of a comparison to V3, but we're not really going to do too much of that because honestly, it's quite different. And we'll introduce the .NET Teams Bot Builder V4 SDK. And talk a bit about which is currently in preview, and we'll talk a bit about our roadmap for the future for building the other SDKs, or the Node.js SDK, and moving forward with our support for the Bot Framework V4. We'll wrap up with a good Q&A session. Yep. So I am Andrew Clear. I'm a PM on the Developer Lifecycle Excellence team, and also on the call we have Bill Bliss. Bill, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I haven't seen the recent list of who's on the call, but I'm pretty sure I've spoken with many of you before. Usually we try to do this from the same physical location, but I have to be on main campus today, so I'm somewhere else. And hopefully no one will interrupt me because I had to find some place. But anyway, really excited to talk to you about this. This is something that we've gotten lots and lots of questions about at the rate of about 1 or 2 a week for the past couple of months. And we finally have something to say to you about it. So, and Andrew's been on point. So really excited to talk to you about it.
Awesome. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump into a overview of Bot Framework V4. I'm not sure how many of you have used V4 or V3, so we're going to start out with an overview of some of the key concepts inside V4. So what's new in Bot Framework V4? And today, everything that we're going to be talking about is .NET. I'll forget to say .NET specifically, but the SDK preview that we've put out is for .NET, so this is all .NET specific. So if you were here hoping for Node and TypeScript stuff, sorry, this is all .NET. But basically everything, which is pretty important to understand, right? Bot Framework V4 is totally different than V3. If you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, it's built on top of .NET Core, and it's very in alignment with the way that the .NET Core world thinks about stuff. There's a completely different dependency injection model. There's a high level idea of the granular separation of concerns sort of embedded throughout the framework. And then one of the big things that the Bot Framework team wanted to do was they wanted to align their SDK across languages, so that if you switched between languages when building bots, the SDKs were similar. In V3 they were pretty disparate, and V4 they've aligned all of those things. So some key concepts and ideas that will be sort of returning to throughout the rest of this conversation. Everything that you could do in V3, you can do in V4, and vice versa. The way that you go and accomplish that is just different, but it's all everything that's possible in one is possible in the other. It's just structured differently, it's wrapped differently, and things like the way that it handles dependency injection, all those sorts of things are just different, but you can do everything in both. If you're a fan of ASP.NET Core, you'll like V4. It'll feel very comfortable to you, and it will be normal. If you've never worked in ASP.NET Core, it'll be a bit of it takes a little bit to get used to the way everything is structured. And a good way to think of this, and I'll be returning to this analogy a lot, is like it's like an onion or a Russian doll. Sort of everything is controlled in layers, and everything has an accessor layer. So you have an adapter on the outside that wraps dialogues, that wraps middleware, that wraps your turn context, that wraps your state accessors, which wraps your storage. And so we'll be sort of showing a lot of this stack in the demo later on, but just keep in mind that sort of this is structured, and layers.
Andrew, one more thing to mention, and it's I don't think it'll come up anywhere else in the presentation, is that the wire protocol, the underlying protocol, the JSON that goes back and forth, and the rules for what the message formats are and when they're sent and so forth has not changed at all. So you can have a V3. You don't have to worry about a V3 versus V4 bots. From the source code level, they're very different, but from the wire protocol level, they're exactly the same, and that was a key requirement. So there's no breaking changes there.
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to make sure that we said was, if you've got V3 bots that you're happy with that work, we're going to continue to support you. The documentation is there if you want to expand upon those V3 bots. If you like ASP.NET Core and you like the way that V4 bots are structured and you want to dive into V4, we are working on getting the SDKs and the documentation and samples to help you. But we really want to make sure that both worlds exist and you have the support you need, no matter which path that you choose. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and dive into sort of each of those layers in turn. So the sort of the core place that you'll be working within your V4 bot is the idea of turn context. This is the turn context is the core object that wraps each interaction with your bot, right? So in the simplest case with like no middleware, basically the HTTP post message comes in with the JSON activity. The JSON then gets deserialized into an object, and that object gets passed by the adapter into the turn context. And then through the turn context is where you're going to go ahead and check the activity type and then dig into the logic of your bot, right? You're going to grab, if it's a message, you're going to do one thing. If it's Invoke, you're going to do another thing. But sort of turn context is the key bit of everything, is the heart of everything, basically. And I didn't say earlier, if you have questions, please feel free to shout them out. I don't mind interrupting to answer questions or whatever. So if I say something that doesn't make any sense or you have questions, we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. I've got Bill here. He knows everything about everything. So if you stump me, I'm sure Bill can come to my rescue. Yeah, and if your question doesn't have an answer, we'll punt it to the end and we'll try to find an answer or follow up with you afterwards. Okay, so dealing with your turn context, the next thing you're going to need to learn about is and deal with is sort of the storage, the state property accessors, and the state. This one's takes a little bit to get your head wrapped around, but basically you have your storage layer, which is a data access layer that actually wraps your physical storage. In the out of the box, it comes with 3 types of storage that you can make use of. An in-memory storage that's primarily for testing purposes. It gets reset every time your bot resets. There's an Azure storage which would dump your storage into table storage in Azure, and then there's a Cosmos DB adapter that'll come out of the box. You can also build your own, so you can write to whatever storage that you want. But basically, it's a data access layer that abstracts away the storage, so you don't have to worry about how it's writing to the disk itself or writing to whatever. And then on top of that, you have they kind of use state and storage interchangeably. It's kind of odd, but it uses the same. That phrase is kind of used interchangeably. But you have a state property accessor, which is a context and scope aware wrapper around your storage. So context and scope is very important. Basically, out of the box, you get 3 contexts, and we'll talk about Teams adds a 4th one for you to use. But basically, you can scope to sort of personal, where all of your storage then your bot will be aware of that storage in the context of a personal conversation. So if your bot's talking to a person, they stop talking, they start talking to them again. You can pick up that same state. There's channel specific, and I'm not remembering the other one off the top of my head, but there's a couple out of the box, and Teams adds a 3rd one. But the thing to remember is that you can write your own. So if you wanted to extend and write your own context that says, hey, you remember across these 3 people, we remember all of them as one conversation for whatever reason, or however you wanted to do it, you can write your own context aware state property accessor. And then sort of the state is just the loaded up status, all of the current state properties. Does that all make sense? Hope that all makes sense. It's a little bit confusing, but we'll drop into it in the demo, and it will become a little bit clearer. One of the key concepts in V4 that's been expanded on a lot and is really integral to the platform is this idea of middleware. And middleware allows you to perform logic or actions both before and after each turn is processed. So what that means, a couple things. So basically, your activity gets passed into the adapter creates your activity, and then it hands it off to the middleware, and then your middleware hands it off to the turn context, and then the turn context hands it back off to the middleware, and then it goes back to the end user. So it happens both before and after. This implies a couple things, and this is where earlier in a slide I had granular separation of concerns. This is where the separation of concerns idea kind of breaks down a little bit, because the order of your middleware and the order that you load them up is very, very important, because they so you'll register however many layers, however many different middlewares that you want to use, and they will fire in the order that you register them, and then they will fire on the way out in the reverse order that you registered them. So that's a big thing to keep in mind, because part of the Teams SDK includes a bunch of middleware pieces, and you'll be wiring these up, and you need to pay attention to the order of what's going on. So middleware is really good for something that needs to happen on every single turn. So if you're going to add something to every single turn context, or strip something out every single turn context, or something like that, that's middleware is great for that. If you're going to do it every single time a message comes in, middleware is really going to help. So obviously, something like logging, you want to log every single activity. A middleware logger is a great place to do that. Modifying and enhancing the turn context before processing, you want to add some metadata to it every single time. You want that kind of stuff. And also using and reusing someone else's middleware or your own middleware in multiple places, right? So this is a good way if you've got more than one bot and you want to reuse the same bit of logic across them. Middleware is a good place to do that, because it allows you a nice clean way to hook and sort of wrap your turn context in your own logic. For example, adding team-specific information to all activities. We'll use our SDK uses middleware to add the team-specific information to the activity that the turn context is then going to process.
So one thing to think about is on middleware is, and by the way, the middleware concept was present in the .NET, or is present in the .NET version. I'm sorry, the Node version of V3. But it wasn't really there in a rich sense in V3 on .NET, and they had kind of an explicit dependency injection pattern that was, C#, familiar to C# programmers, but a little bit mysterious, and vice versa. So what they did is they basically took the middleware concept from Node and applied it across the board in a consistent way across both platforms. And that's really what it is. And it is, in the abstract, it's kind of a form of dependency injection, although I think it's more useful to think of it in the way that Andrew's described here. And the order is kind of like, the order dependency, which, as Andrew said, is a little bit unusual for middleware, but it's kind of like a stack. It's like, it's kind of like every piece of, you can define your own function. That's really what it is, literally. And it's kind of like a stack with pushing and popping, and so that's where the order comes in. So the middleware concept is pretty familiar to Node programmers. For .NET folks, it's going to be kind of a new thing, but there's really nothing super magical about it. And certainly in the context of Bot Framework 4, once you get your head around it, as Andrew said, it's actually pretty straightforward.
And useful. I think I hope that those of you that grab our SDK take a look at our middleware and see how we made use of the concept. I think you'll find that once you get used to it, you can do a lot with it. It's a pretty cool idea. But it does get a little bit confusing because now when we start talking about state plus middleware, because your middleware can act after your turn context fires, things can get a little fishy with state, right? Because if you saved the state during your turn on the on-turn function, but then the middleware goes ahead and changes it again on the way out, weird things can happen. You can get overwritten. So there's actually, out of the box, there's an auto save changes middleware. which can help you deal with that situation. But again, the key thing to realize is that middleware is wrapping your entire turn context. And once you start getting into things like dialogues, right? Dialogue is a layer outside of the middleware. And again, dialogue is actually just a stack that you push activities onto the stack, and that's how it works, and it pops them off. But so if you add, we can add to this diagram dialogues outside of the middleware, and then which wraps everything, what dialogue wraps everything, and then blah blah blah. So that's kind of an interesting way to think it. To go back to the onion analogy, right? Everything is in layers, and it peels off and it comes back on. And that's just, if you can keep that in your mind while you're working through this, it will really help guide your thought process.
Turtles all the way down.
Yep. Okay. So that's going to be that's it for our bot framework overview. So if you want to learn more about bot framework, I highly recommend checking out their docs. The concept section of their docs is very well written. And if you have some time and you want to learn more about bot framework 4, I recommend checking out the docs. They're pretty good. All right, so we are going to jump into now our SDK, the Teams Bot Builder v4.net Preview SDK. That's a very long name. I got muted again. I'm back. Okay, so basically the SDK contains 5 different middleware classes and a team-specific state storage. So we're going to give you some middleware that you can wire up to do team-specific stuff. The primary one is called Teams Middleware. This creates a Teams context object, and we'll go through all of this in a demo here in a bit, but I kind of wanted to give you an idea before we jump into the demo. So the Teams middleware creates the Teams context object that adds the team specific data to the activity. It allows you to do things like get the channel ID and the team ID and that kind of stuff, and all of your other team specific interactions. There's a drop channel activities middleware and a drop chat activities middleware, which allow you to restrict interactions to a particular channel. For example, if your bot doesn't support one-to-one chat, so you drop all chat activities. This is kind of a fail-safe in case someone grabs your bot and side loads it and accidentally, adds a personal context when they're loading up your bot. This will basically make it so you just ignore all chat conversations, or ignore all channel conversations if you only want to have chat conversations. Along a similar vein, we've got a Teams tenant filtering middleware, which allows you to restrict particular tenant IDs, and then you can drop all non-Teams activities in middleware. Basically short circuits the pipeline on any activity that didn't originate in Teams. So basically for that, kind of allow you to additionally scope your bot and hopefully don't have to do less error handling directly in the logic of your bot itself. And then we add a storage state that allows you to have a team-specific conversation state, which scopes the storage across a team rather than a conversation or personal. So we'll see that in action, but basically it will allow you to save state across a team. So if you interact with a bot in one channel and then interact with a bot in another channel in the same team, the bot still knows the state. All right.
So a little bit more on the tenant filtering middleware. That we actually have a page in the documentation that talks about how to filter out the traffic from a bot. And one of the things you'll see is that on the node side of things, where middleware has always been there, it uses this dropping approach. It just looks for a tenant ID and drops it. But on .NET, we don't do that, and that's because the way we did it on .NET, or the way we do it on .NET in the 3x SDK, is that we introduced our own functions for sending and receiving messages. But if you use the bot framework ones, which is very easy to do, and the first ones you try usually, it didn't do the filtering. And so it was very, very easy to evade it. Whereas in the case with middleware, you can't, which is quite nice. So this is an example of where the middleware transparently adds something in a very secure and reliable way that really isn't possible without it.
All right. so we are about to jump into the demo and give you a quick outline of what we're going to do. So we're going to start from scratch. We're going to create a new bot builder project. We're going to add the Teams SDK to it. We'll wire up some middleware. We'll grab the TeamsContext, and I'll show you a little bit of what's possible inside there. We'll go ahead and retrieve and update some state data. We'll add a messaging extension, and then I'll show you what it looks like inside Teams. So let's make sure we can get everything going.
I hope this isn't a visual of how difficult it is to use Bot Framework 4.0 with Teams.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to use Bot Framework. Just so everyone knows, it feels like that. But once you get good at it, you'll be in there. No, okay. So, oh man, that screen resolution is different than I was expecting. All right, so that's fun. Okay, so to start out with, I'll show you the how to get started. So basically, there is a bot framework extension for V4, which allows you to. There's a couple different templates which do a couple different things, which is actually kind of frustrating, and I'll show you in a sec. But there's a couple different ones. So there is the enterprise bot template, which we are not going to use today, but it is good to know that this is out there. If you want to basically get a all-in-one what all can bots do template, it's more of a sample app, honestly, than a template. But if you want to explore the V4 SDK for bot framework, this is a good place to get a feel for what all is possible. And then there's also this one, which is the one that we're going to use today, and this includes the smaller Echo bot template that we're going to start out with today. But yeah, those are both available in the extensions and updates. So once you have those wired up, you should be able to fire up a new project. Now, so this is awesome. So you'll see over here that if you have the V3 and the V4 installed like I do, or the Enterprise and the Echo Bot installed, you'll end up with two bot framework nodes, one with a space, one without a space. And unfortunately, you would think that one of these is V4 and one of these is V3. That's not the case. So it's you just kind of want to pay attention over here to the description. For example, the Enterprise bot template is for V4, and then the Echo Bot one, did I double click that? Of course I did. Laptop keyboards are the best. Yeah. There's my close solution. Yeah, anyways, so just pay attention to which one you're grabbing. The Echo Bot one that we're going to use today is in the one with no space and V4 template. So we're just going to fire this up. We'll call you Echo. We'll drop you. Actually, I think there's something already called Echo in there. So we'll put you, yeah, just put you right here. We'll go ahead and fire that up. The EchoBot template is nice. It doesn't have too much boilerplate stuff in here, but it does include, if you want to be able to deploy to Azure, it includes a nice set of deployment scripts that will help you deploy your bot to Azure when you're ready to move out of production. So that's nice to know. Okay, so we will jump down, and now we will install the Teams SDK. So that's a package. Microsoft.bot.builder.teams. And since we're in preview, beta 1. All right, now we are good to go. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and wire up the Teams middleware. If you've never been inside a .framework or a .NET Core 1 project, the place where you wire up all your dependency injection and your in this case middleware is in your startup class. Whoa. Sorry, the screen resolution is killing me here. All right, I'm going to drop in all of our using statements to pull in our, so we get fewer errors. So basically, sets up a bunch of stuff for you, pulls in your app settings files and all of that kind of stuff. Builds your configuration. So inside your configuration, we're going to add the bot. Sorry, give me just one sec. Try to figure out if I can zoom out here. All right. So we are going to add options dot middleware, add new drop non-teams. We're going to add the drop non-teams activity middleware, basically so that we can clean out any chat with our bot, so that that doesn't come from Teams. And we are going to also add the Teams middleware. Pass in a credential provider. Oh, no. Oh, right. Just you're killing me. Okay, so we're going to do something, try to fix this a little bit. Give me just one sec, folks. Sorry, I can't deal with that. So let's grab you and dismiss. Oh, here. Everybody see my screen again? Hopefully that's a little bit more visible.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's switch to a different screen. Sorry, I'm in a conference room I've never actually used before and having visual difficulties. All right. Now I need to pull my demo script back up. All right, let's change the credential provider to the right credential provider so we can actually build this thing.
You're missing an R, that's why.
Yeah, you just spelled it wrong.
Thanks. Thank you. All right, cool. So now that we've got our middleware wired up, we can go ahead and register the necessary singletons. In this case, we need to register the, we're going to change the, conversation state to be the team specific conversation state. So we're going to go ahead and change this type to team specific. So what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to, and we'll break the accessor here in a second, but we're going to change the conversation state again so that the state is maintained across the entire team instead of just specific to one particular conversation. So now we got to go fix our accessor. So our accessor again is the wrapper around the state layer that allows us to get into the state. So this becomes, we pass in a team specific conversation state, and we'll have to add the using here. Enter. Oh, that's not where that goes. You didn't change the type of that. Okay, so basically that's the sort of the end of wiring up everything that's going on. So what we do is we change so we wired up the team specific conversation state instead of the out of the box conversation state, and we piped in the team specific middleware. So now that we've got everything wired up, we can jump over into the echobot.cs, which is sort of the core class that contains the heart of the logic of your bot. So in here, there's going to be the on-turn async class, and the on-turn async class function is where basically this is what gets called once the activity gets in. It gets through your middleware passes it off to this class. So inside here is where we're going to go ahead and start playing around with the turn context. And in this case, there's already a activity type setup of activity type message. So when we send it a message, this is what's going to fire. And now we're going to wire up a, let's go ahead and add the usings first. Well, we'll fix it. Excuse me, my apologies. Yeah, that's not how that works. So we get the TeamsContext from the turn context, from the turn state, and we get of type iTeams. And now let's fix you. Ready, bro? Turn context, turn state, get. Oh, that's odd. Yeah, for some reason I lost my opening group. Anyways, okay, so the TeamsContext object, again, is what's going to allow you to index into sort of the team specific portions of the SDK. So from here, we can do things like grab the team ID. So inside the Teams context object, there's a bunch of stuff we can get from inside here. We'll go through this a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and grab team.id. And that will allow us to get more information about the team. I'll show you that in just a sec. We're going to grab the channel ID. And we'll grab the tenant ID. Oh. Okay. So okay. Excuse me. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and grab sort of a couple other things that are cool that we can grab. So we can grab the conversation list. Sorry, all of the channels as a conversation list. There's a bunch of get methods inside here. Yes. I thought that was the method. Of course. Don't you want to use an int? Yeah, that's because that's the wrong method. Did that? Sorry. We'll skip that one, I guess. I'll have to look that up again. My apologies. Okay, never mind. So we'll grab something else. We can grab the team info. Why is that method not showing up? Am I missing a using statement? Sorry. debugging while in here is always awesome. I think I'm missing a using statement. No. Where is? Okay, so I'm apparently doing something wrong, so we're going to go ahead and skip over that part. But basically, the core idea here is that from the TeamsContext object, you can fetch and get a bunch of the team-specific context stuff, and then you'll be able to return that to the client, do whatever you want with it, manipulate it, and that sort of stuff. Basically, you can build the, for example, you could build it into your return message at the end of processing the activity. We send an async message back to the client with the response message. It's pretty straightforward stuff, and we will be fully documenting the SDK here shortly. So things like this, and hopefully you won't run into the same problems that I just did. But yeah, hopefully all of that part made sense. That's basically how you wire up a message. We'll drop something in here. So we'll say from team ID of teams text or sorry, we made it a variable, so we'll just say incoming team ID. And we can return that in the response to the client. Another thing you can do, so I did want to give you guys a quick Invoke example as well. So we're going to go ahead and add a messaging extension inside here. So we're going to switch on activity type. Invoke. What? Yeah, I got it. Why don't you have the invoke activity type? Bill, do you know why I don't have the invoke activity type? Am I crazy?
No, I'm trying to find it right now.
Yeah, I seem to be missing large portions of what I thought was going to be wired up here. I've got a working example right here. So let's go ahead and jump over to the echobot.cs.
I think you are using action type start instead of activity types.
Oh, huh, thanks. Yeah, we don't want to use action types, do we? Activity types dot invoke. There it is. Hey, thanks.
Well, that was probably your problem last time too.
Yeah, it must have auto-filled my yeah, so we probably need an else if here. All right, so let's go ahead and finish this off. So we're going to go ahead and so this is a pretty bare bones example. So you probably wouldn't embed all of this inside here like I would. You'd abstract a lot of this away and all this kind of stuff. But for demonstration purposes, one of the worst phrases of all time, I'm just going to go ahead and quickly create a messaging extension result. Messaging extension result. We'll call it compose extension. Type is result. And we're going to add it. We're going to create a little thumbnail. Oh. Stop doing that. Oh, you're killing me. All right, so that's going to be the result that we're going to return. We're going to add a thumbnail card. We'll give it a cool title. Give it some text.
You said text or test?
Yeah, thanks. Something tells me I should just be copy pasting all this stuff in. All right. We're going to go ahead and just grab this, and we'll add a picture of a cat to our thumbnail because that's what you add. Okay, so now that we've got the bits wired up, we'll go ahead and add that thumbnail to our response. Okay, so basically all of that was just normally what you would be building these, you would be searching some external library, you would be hooking up to some external service or something, and that's where you would be creating the result in the thumbnail card. So what I just did is normally you wouldn't be building those directly inside here. And on here are our result. Give it a status code. And then we will all right, and then we will finally return that back to our client. And we'll use the send activity async option, and we're going to create a new activity. The value is our response object, and the type is activity. Invoke response. Or did I misspell? No. I'm not going to send multiple activities. We're going to send a single activity. As you can see, you could send multiple activities at once. That method actually takes in an array of activities, which is actually kind of nice. It's very useful. And then we'll just do nothing. Probably have to spell catch right though. For right now. Okay, so probably should spell exception right as well. Exception EX. Really? Okay. So all of that is basically to run through this really quick. So what we're going to do is when we receive a type message, we go ahead and create our Teams context object from our SDK. Again, the team context object is the one that allows you to index into the team stuff. We grab some stuff from the Teams context, like the ID, the channel. Inside this operations method, there is a way to fetch more information about the team, more information about the channel, more information about the tenant, and do operations on that. You can also, if you want, you can save that sort of stuff to state. In this case, we're also writing basically a very simple just counter to our state accessor. I wanted to show you guys what happens with the Teams context. So we'll demo that. I'll show you what that looks like in the client in just a bit. We use our accessors to access our storage. One thing to note when you're using your accessors, it separates out the write to the object and then write to disk. So you can stage changes inside here and then do and then save them later. Again, earlier when I was talking about the using a outer middleware to wrap everything up with a final save changes async. This is where you would, if you're using a bunch of middlewares that can change the state after the turn context fires, because remember, after this turn context fires, everything gets handed back to the middleware in the reverse order of the way that you wired up the middleware. So if you're going to be changing things after turn context, you can wrap everything up in a middleware that basically just does exactly this, and saves your state one final time, or the only time necessarily. That way you capture everything. Yeah, and so if we just chat with our bot, we're going to return just a simple text with the value of our state counter, as well as we're going to drop in the team ID. I think my demo actually drops in a team name, because I'm not going to deploy all of this right now, because you need to register your bot and sideload into Teams and all that kind of stuff. We're not going to go through all of that. If you want to learn more about how to publish and deploy your bot, we've got really good documentation that will help you learn how to use App Studio to get your bot deployed. Pretty straightforward. Our messaging extension, where you're going to go on Invoke, we're going to fire up a messaging extension, and we're going to just return a thumbnail card. It doesn't do anything interesting other than display the card, but just wanted to be able to show you that. So if we pop into Teams on our demo box here, I've got, make sure this is, let's go ahead and run. I'm using ngrok to tunnel locally. So I've already got ngrok running. Oh, you know what? I don't think I didn't. So we are actually going to have to, check out App Studio, because I did not update the. So if you've never seen App Studio before, App Studio is an app inside Teams that allows you to load up your bot, but we're running short on time, and I do want to leave some time for questions. So I'm just going to run through this really quick. We're going to go ahead and grab my bot, and we're going to change your endpoint to the right one, which should also update my messaging endpoint. Yep, it does. Now we're going to test and distribute. App Studio will help you build your app manifest that helps you deploy, that will allow you to sideload your app. I'm just sideloading. I'm not publishing to the store or creating a package and loading a package or anything interesting. Just want to be able to get up and started. So we'll start out with messaging the bot. So if we talk to the bot, what we should see, hopefully, if everything's wired up correctly. Yeah, because you have to uninstall it and reinstall it. It doesn't work when you just uninstall over the top of the other one. If anybody has any questions, go ahead and start asking now as I jump into this really quick.
Andrew, did you run it in Visual Studio before you left? I can't remember.
Yeah, I did, but I hadn't switched over the ngrok address this morning. You should be running. Yeah, you're running. Jump back into install you.
Real quick, can these be accessed from other services, for example, SharePoint or Power Apps?
A bot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we in this specific instance, so you have to be careful, right? So in this specific instance, we're adding. If you want to use the same bot across multiple channels, you want to be careful about what your error handling, right? So because we've wired up the TeamsContext as a middleware, and we're doing stuff with the TeamsContext. If you call it from SharePoint or a Power App or whatever, that's all going to error out. So you have to if you want to have a multi-channel bot, you need to make sure that you properly detect what channel the message is coming in from before you wire anything like that up. The middleware will handle. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Actually, Andrew, see, SharePoint and Flow aren't bot framework channels, right? So that would be true if you were talking about Facebook or Slack or a web chat or something. But if you wanted to call the same, if your bot is just a web app. So
right.
If you wanted to call your web app, you could set whatever APIs you want, and you could use that same process, same app, and call that from Flow or from SharePoint. I've done that several times before. Like one super easy thing to do is to create a webhook, which is just a route. I don't know what you call it in ASP.NET. I can't remember, but it's just an endpoint that is live on the web that you can return JSON from or accept JSON from or what have you.
Got it. That's exactly what I was thinking, and I guess that's what triggered the question.
Okay, yeah. So if you okay, because you're gonna go you bypass a lot of the stuff if you just call the bot directly.
Yeah, because the thing of that is that basically your bot is just a app logic that listens to APIs, the route API /messages, and it just listens to receive. It receives and sends JSON on that channel, and that's really all a bot is.
Gotcha.
I mean, that route.
Right.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So so if we see, we can drop in the messaging extension that we added. Just drops in that little thumbnail on Invoke, and we can also talk to the Echo bot itself, and it should respond, or it will throw a 500 internal server error. So we won't. So I'll jump back up here so we can see in some of the previous replies. Basically, one of the ideas is you can we're out of time, so I'm not going to fix this. But with the TeamsContext, if I chat to it from this user and it responds, and then I jump to a different user, which obviously. So if you chat to the same bot with a different user, the state's going to be maintained inside that same team. So basically, if I chat from user A, the counter gets incremented to 1. If I chat from user B, it gets incremented to 2 because the state is scoped for the entire team. So I do want to talk roadmap really quickly before we jump off. So sorry for the demo going a little bit long. But basically, before the end of this month, we're going to have sorry, can whoever's got all that background noise mute themselves? Thank you. By late January, we're going to go ahead and have a blog post walking through this and a little bit more on the preview and documenting the what's available inside the team specific SDK. Mid-February-ish, we're going to have the Node SDK preview release. We're hoping to have the general availability of both the Node and the .NET SDKs in March. And then in March, you will also see, oh, that's funny. You guys are looking at my presenter mode. Yeah, there we go. So we're hoping to have the general availability for both SDKs available in March, as well as the doc library and more samples updated for Bot Framework v4. Okay, dropped a couple references on here. There are some really good bot builder samples available for Bot Framework v4, available at aka.ms/bot builder samples. That will get you some. There's like 30 samples, and they just go and they build on top of each other and get more and more complex as you go through the samples. Our SDK is available by a NuGet package, but you can also check it out on GitHub at teams.net bot builder. That will also, inside there's also 4 complete sample apps that are a little bit more production worthy, I guess, if you want to call it that. They are there's some nice abstraction. There's a couple different examples. There's a good one around, like, using Wikipedia to search and return a messaging extension, that kind of stuff. So there's 3 or 4 samples inside the SDK already, and we plan to add more and more documentation around them. All right. Any more questions that we can answer for you? With that, I'll hand it back over.
Okay, thanks everyone for joining today, and thank you, Andrew and Bill, for presenting. Our next call will be in February, on February 19th at 8 a.m. Pacific time, so we hope you can join us then, and look for the Twitter announcement that the recording and summary are up and ready for your viewing. Thank you.